What is up, everyone? Today marks episode number 1 of Sailing Viridian. My name is Ryan, and to kick off this YouTube channel, I've decided to tell you guys kind of a little bit about myself, what led me to purchase this 1979 Catalina 27 here behind me, and kind of show you guys a little bit of the things that I've done to it over the past 2 months or so since I've had it, kind of describe the condition it was in when I first got it, and kind of, just give you guys a good understanding of, where I started out when it comes to sailing. I figure I'll go chronologically so you can kind of get a feel for what I was like growing up, what kind of person I am, what some of my interests are. And then from there, I figure we can go into what really led me to purchase this sailboat. But going chronologically, I would say that I had a relatively normal middle-class childhood growing up. One of the nice things that my family had access to was a beach house in Ocean City, New Jersey, that my grandparents actually bought back in the 1980s. So back when Ocean City kind of didn't really exist and the houses were super cheap. So that beach house definitely gave me access, of course, to the ocean, as well as all the activities that come with it. Interestingly enough, I never really got into boating when I was there. My family was more focused on going to the beach. I was really big into skimboarding. Portions of my family were really big into surfing as well. But I guess it's kind of important to highlight that, yes, I had access to the ocean, and I am a huge fan of the beach, huge fan of the ocean, just a huge fan of anything that really involves water. Then kind of going forward, looking at high school, that's when I started to get a little bit more involved with computers, electronics, technology. I built a couple of different stereo systems. I always liked to tinker around with electronics and build upon them, improve them, modify them. And that's kind of, what led me actually into engineering. So I started at Penn State University, electrical engineering major, in 2011. I actually had to take off for a year or two to get back surgery. I had a skiing accident growing up, and it kind of messed up my L5-S1 disc. So I had 3 back surgeries kind of throughout my college career, which delayed my graduation until 2017. So I graduated in 2017 with a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering and a minor in Engineering Entrepreneurship. At that point, I had a job opportunity available down in the Atlanta area, which is where I ended up here at lovely Lake Lanier. Since Atlanta is landlocked, but it does have Lake Lanier. And Lake Lanier, for those who don't know, I want to say it's about 5-mile long lake, man-made lake that was created when a river was dammed up back in the 50s, I want to say. So it's not quite the ocean, not quite the beach, but it still gets the job done. I would say that my friends consider me a relatively frugal person. I am a big fan of living below my means, also really big into the kind of early retirement and financial independence mindset. And some of you might think that doesn't really play along too well with owning a boat, since boats are known to cost quite a bit of money. But I feel like in this case, since I got the boat for such a low price, and also the fact that it's in fresh water in a climate that doesn't really get cold enough to warrant dry docking the boat, that it does actually play along with my sense of frugality. My overall goal is to eventually retire early and retire on a sailboat, which is preferably not in a lake, in the ocean, so that I can actually go around and travel with it. Other random fun facts: I'm heavily into cryptocurrency. I started back in 2013. Still wish I kept the majority of the cryptocurrency I had back in 2013, but I still am actively mining it to this day. I've been mining it off and on from 2013 up until now, which right now it's August 2019. So I've been involved for quite a while with it. Still holding. Haven't sold anything since like 2014. So maybe that will eventually help out with my early retirement I mentioned as well. I'm also a big fan of staying in shape and exercising. With my back surgeries, I haven't really been able to do a whole lot of jogging or any sort of loading activities, which puts stress on my lower back. So the majority of my workouts are focused on body weight workouts, which actually work out pretty okay in this boat. There's actually a pretty good beam here, up here, for doing pull-ups on, which I found out a couple days ago. So that's good. And I still have to get some weights so I can stay in shape here. But when it comes to cardio, I usually do elliptical at the gym since it's a lot easier on my back. But I do like to stay in shape. I am a big fan of eating healthy as well, and I think it's important to, just take care of yourself overall. So that's pretty much me, my personality in a nutshell. Feel free if you have any additional questions to ask. I'm not a very private person. I'm always willing to share information about myself. Now, what led me to actually purchase this 1979 Catalina 27? It's important to note that my mom, growing up, was into sailing, and my grandfather started around the age of 45 or 50. So sailing has always been there in my family, but interestingly enough, I've never actually gone sailing with my mom or my grandfather. They always talked about it a lot, but I never really got that opportunity. I would say that overall my first real exposure to sailing was honestly probably through YouTube and a mix of a couple of other different online communities. I was a really big fan of the fact that owning a sailboat is generally a lot cheaper than owning a powerboat, and with that I was also a big fan of kind of the ability to move freely wherever you want to. I'm not a big fan of the 9-to-5 lifestyle, and I kind of enjoy the freedom that a sailboat kind of represents and will hopefully eventually provide me with. It also definitely does tie into my frugality and living below my means. I mean, on a 27-foot sailboat, there's not a whole lot of storage space. I mean, quick pan of a couple things over here. And you'll get the full tour later on in the video, but it is a small boat, but I actually do enjoy living in small spaces. I've always been a fan of one-bedroom apartments. If I have enough stuff where I can't keep it in one bedroom and one family room, then I usually donate it. So owning a sailboat and kind of living that mobile, compact lifestyle and frugal lifestyle definitely resonates very strongly with my current personality and the current things that I'm passionate about. I would say it was about 8 months ago when I actually started to seriously consider purchasing a sailboat. That was kind of the point in my life where I had enough money saved up from working, I had a stable job, a decent salary, and enough to actually go out and, one, save up enough money for the boat, and then two, ensure that I have enough money to pay for maintenance, slip rental, repairs, upgrades, etc. So my research really started online, I would say the majority of which were sailing YouTube channels, just to get a feel for, what sailing actually entails. From there, I went and purchased a couple of different sailing textbooks to learn some of the theory, some of the vocab, which I'm sure I will mess up in the remainder of this video, so please forgive me in advance for any times where I mess up on the vocab. But the textbooks were really good for theory. I also downloaded a couple of different sailing simulations, which, same thing, good for the theory, but you are using your thumbs on a phone, so it's not the same as actually sailing. And then from there, once I was actually comfortable enough with the theory, I'd watched a couple of different sailing, also some sailing documentaries on Amazon. There's a couple of good ones on Amazon Prime. I was at a point where I was a little bit more comfortable, and I started to actively look for sailboats on Lake Lanier. I used a couple of different sources, the main one being Craigslist. I also looked at Boat Trader, but Boat Trader tends to be some of the higher end boats, whereas Craigslist is some of the more bargain style or older boats. So after looking for probably around a month or two, I actually had two pretty good sailboats pop up. One, of course, being this boat I'm in right now, and the other one was also a 27-footer sun yacht, and it was, interestingly enough, the same year, 1979. So I checked out both of them. I actually checked out this one first. And my first impression of this one was like, wow, it's in pretty good condition. It's relatively simple. It still has the tiller steering, small 4 horsepower outboard, but definitely a pretty solid starter boat. The Sun Yacht actually had the helm with the actual, forgive me if this isn't the right word, but the steering wheel, and it also had an inboard motor. So I was like, well, that one's a little bit more advanced, a little bit more complete of a boat, if you want to call it that. So I went and checked it out. Honestly, it wasn't really in that good a condition. The interior was kind of falling apart. The motor was having problems starting. The rigging wasn't too good either. So I kind of left that meeting and I was like, not really feeling that one. So I called up the owner who previously owned this boat and said he had it listed for $4,500 cash, and I was like, hey, I have $4,000 in cash right now in my pocket because I was looking at this boat this morning. Can $4,000 work for you? And he said yeah. So we went ahead. About an hour later, I met him at a coffee shop, signed all the paperwork, and handed over 40 $100 bills. And that is how I ended up with my 1979 Catalina 27. So what are my next steps with this sailboat? I'll be honest, I have actually already sailed it about 4 or 5 times now. Turns out that one of my good friends down here in the Atlanta area is actually a sailing instructor. So he was willing, when I told him I was purchasing a sailboat, he was willing to take me out and teach me the ropes. So he took me out, taught me, and I picked it up relatively quick considering how much time I spent reading and watching videos. But everyone always says, you spend the first couple hours figuring out how to sail, and then you spend the next 10 years actually perfecting how to sail. So I can sail. I'm sure I'm not very optimized when it comes to speed, so I have to work on that. But I have taken it out a couple times. I am planning on keeping this one for quite a while, so I've already started working on the interior a little bit. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to film all of that starting off, but I will give you a walkthrough of the boat and explain the condition it was in and some of the changes I've made to it. But that's basically me in a nutshell, my story of how I ended up with the sailboat, and now let's go ahead and actually look at the boat and see what I got for $4,000. So looking at the actual boat, as I mentioned, it's a 1979 Catalina 27. This is it here. I guess I'll kind of just walk around the exterior of the boat, point out a few things kind of as I go. I am docked at Lake Lanier in Georgia, so this is fresh water. It's not salt water. So when I was talking, with the guy when I purchased it, he mentioned how the maintenance is a lot lower due to it being in fresh water, and the fact that it's in Georgia, it doesn't really get cold enough here to warrant you to have to take it out of the water, which is good. So kind of, just going around it. Overall, the exterior is in pretty good shape. I would say when I first got it, there were a couple leaks, especially in the windows, up on the hatch, and then also kind of on the rear hatch. And excuse me, I'm not a experienced sailor, so I apologize in advance if I'm calling these the wrong words, but feel free to just let me know in the comments section, since I only started sailing 2 months ago, so I'm still learning all the vocabulary. But as I mentioned, the exterior is in pretty good condition. It did need a good scrubbing when I bought it. The guy I bought it from, there was one other previous owner that I'm aware of. I'm assuming going back further, there's multiple more owners, since it's about 50-year-old boat. But either the previous owner or the one before that made definitely some solid refurbishments. I wouldn't really call them upgrades, but kind of just keeping it in good shape overall. So I'm gonna hop on it and kind of walk around the boat and point out a couple things as well. So I guess starting off at the bow, overall the railings are in super good shape. Not sure if they're the original ones, but nevertheless they seem and feel almost new. The rigging is also pretty solid. This has definitely been fixed at least once in its lifetime. You can see up there everything's nice and tight. No major issues with the mast that I'm aware of. The only, I guess the only downside is the wind vane. If I come around to the side here, the wind vane is a little bit crooked, as if over time it bent back, or they went under something that was just a little bit too low and bent it back. Not sure, but I'll have to get that fixed or fix it myself at some point. What else? So as I mentioned, the hatch was leaking when I first got it, so I put down some of this kind of rubber squishy sealant stuff. I think I realized after the fact that you're supposed to put it up here and not down actually on the boat, but I ran out. But it seems to be working well. I just think that, you know, if you like rub up against it, you have a better chance of, you know, ripping it off if you're dropping stuff in from the hatch. Kind of coming around, looking at the windows. So, you know, you can see they're pretty old. I actually resealed them with some clear silicone right after I got it, since I think it was about 3 of the 6 windows were leaking kind of throughout the boat. Nothing major, nothing drastic, but a little bit of drips here and there. Here on the other side, we have the waste hookup and also the water hookup. These actually aren't connected to anything inside the boat, and I'll show you that as I kind of go through the interior. But I guess, you know, the good thing is that they're here, and they've definitely been used. I mean, you can see the wear on the little insert there. So they've been used at some point in their life. There is a water tank on the boat. It's not hooked up to anything, as I mentioned, but there's definitely no waste tank, and the water tank's relatively small. Coming back to the mast, I can show you. Here's where the boom connects. The sail's in pretty good shape. You know, a little bit of mold on it, but nothing too drastic. I have taken it out sailing 3 times now since I got it. No major issues. The only issue is that the only halyard it has is the mainsail. So there isn't any halyard for the jib, or in this case, I believe it's a Genoa that came with it. So I've had to sail, you know, around right now with just the mainsail, which isn't as fast, of course, but I guess it's easier of a learning curve for me, I think. Basically, the previous owner said that he was hoisting up the jib, or the Genoa, and the rope, or the line was super frayed, and I believe it ripped and kind of fell all the way out of the mast. So I have to figure out how to fix that. I was looking online, and since the boat's so old, it's kind of hard to find any sort of maintenance guides or anything. Winches are in good shape. I was looking for like a hole where I figured the halyard would come out for raising the jib, but I don't see anything. So I think there's some sort of pulley system up there. I believe that it would feed through, but I do not have any sort of climbing equipment, nor do I know how to climb. So that will be an interesting experience for me. Alrighty, so I'm here on the stern. I also kind of walk you through the motor. It came with a little 4 horsepower outboard Mercury. It's served me well so far. The previous owner said he hasn't, you know, really had any issues with it. You know, being that I'm on a lake, 4 horsepower is fine. You know, it's definitely a little bit undersized in my opinion. If I were, you know, to take this in the ocean, of course. But Lake Lanier is a landlocked lake, so I won't have to worry about that. But let's go ahead here and move some of this stuff out of the way. Show you the outboard. So right now, there's actually no cover on it, so the cover's over there. I guess the kind of unique thing is that the little opening there on the back is kind of like just the right size where it won't fit if the cover's on the motor. So I have to basically keep it without the cover on the motor at all times. The good thing is that this little storage area here, the lid keeps all the water off the motor, so it doesn't really ever experience any sort of water dripping on it or anything. So right now I have it tilted back so it's not in the water. Got a little gas can there. You can see, I mean, there's a lot of room back here. It's just the actual opening itself is pretty small. So if I were to ever transfer this to the ocean, I would definitely need to remove the 4 horsepower and either finish off that opening, you know, make it just a solid piece of the hull, or I could mount a motor kind of on the side, like that guy right over there. So I could potentially do that if I have to, but for the lake here, the 4 horsepower seems to be okay. So here we have the tiller. It's actually in pretty good condition. It seems like the previous owner sanded it down, refinished it. So I mean, overall it's super smooth, has a nice look to it as well, which is pretty nice. Here's the mainsail sheet. So you can see I just got it locked up right now. It does, you know, get in the way a little bit. I guess it's got that set up where it's kind of more towards the stern rather than kind of up above the, I guess the main part of the hull here, like some of the newer boats. So it does get in the way a little bit if there's people sitting back here. But you know, not the end of the world. Still back on the stern here. In this drawer, I just have the anchor, and that's pretty much it. And then there's a couple little storage compartments here. Got some scrub brushes. This is the paneling that kind of blocks off the cabin. So it's a 4-piece kind of panel system. It's been broken from one of the previous owners, I believe, and refixed. But you know, basically you just pop them in piece by piece. And it was leaking. You know, even though it works pretty well. So I have this tarp here that I've kind of draped over the boom, and it's got some bungee cords here to keep it taut, and it does a really good job of keeping the water kind of off the main section of the boat, and therefore keeps it relatively dry inside. Looking again, you know, still here on the stern. I gotta open my lockup. You guys better not look. Take that off. Got some life jackets. Type 4 flotation device. One of those ladders to climb in and out, which is nice. A little foldable chair I bought at Walmart. And then I also did buy a battery cover. But the battery I still have yet to purchase. So the previous owner, when he sold me this, he was telling me how you know, the electrical system doesn't really work, etc., etc. And I was like, oh, you know, it's, you know, not a big deal. I studied electrical engineering, so and I'm familiar with wiring and everything. So I still have yet to actually try to hook up dock power or slip power to the boat. So I did buy a marine cable, so I'm going to hook it up tonight and kind of see what happens. Hopefully no fires will start. I do have 2 fire extinguishers on the boat, but you can see down in here there is there's a small breaker panel, which is two 20 amp breakers. It just comes in from the it's from the marine hookup, which I can actually show you in a second out on the boat, and then those kind of pass through the wood paneling here and then into the rest of the boat. So it looks like, and I still have to look at it more before I hook in the power, but there is one cable that's running down here, and I'm not sure what it's for right now. It's the only one that doesn't really run out the back, so I have to figure that out. And there are some red and black leads down there for, I'm assuming these feed to the 12-volt DC panel on the inside of the boat, and these would, you know, eventually hook up to the battery that I have yet to actually install in here. I just have some wiring and some terminal blocks there as well. Okie doke, so let's go down inside and I can show you guys the interior. So we just have standard 3 steps here. I'm looking back at the steps. You know, that's the outside back there, stern of the boat. There's the tarp. It's bent back a little bit right now, so it usually covers the whole thing. But I guess kind of just, you know, walking through everything. Here's the little kitchen area. As I mentioned, so there is a water tank, and it's stored actually under this little seating area under there. However, there's nothing really hooked up to it. It's just a water tank sitting there. So there is a sink, and there's a foot pump if I want to pump water out, but it's not hooked up to anything right now, so it, of course, doesn't pump. That's something I plan to get to eventually. Not really high on my priority list because, you know, I can always just bring jugs of water with me. It's not a huge deal. Just got some snacks back there, some paperwork, another fire extinguisher. This is where the stove would be. I think it was an alcohol stove on these models. However, it didn't come with it, and the previous owner said it never came with it when he bought it from the previous owner. So somewhere along the line, it was lost, either broken or dropped in the water somewhere. I got 2 little storage drawers down here, just some snacks, and then some beer koozies in there. The previous owner actually left me quite a bit of different, I guess you would call these chemical type things for maintenance on the boat. So there's some motor treatment spray, some teak oil, some starter fluid, some WD-40 in there too. There was some deck paint, a couple other small things in here. These slide open and open up, which is nice. What else we got? Fiberglass solvent wash. Oh, the air horn as well. We need one of those. So this is nice. I'm probably going to transfer these things out of there at some point because I'd rather have, I don't know, food or drinks in there or something rather than a bunch of chemicals. Kind of looking at the main seating area now. It actually came with all relatively new upholstery. So it's got new upholstery here on this bench, new upholstery over here, and actually new upholstery that goes all the way back actually towards the outboard motor area in the stern. And then also in the sleeping area, all brand new upholstery. So pretty crazy deal. I mean, I looked this stuff up on Catalina Direct, and it's like $2,000, I think, for the whole set. So either the previous owner or the owner before that spent a pretty penny on this upholstery, considering I got the boat for only $4,000. I mean, the upholstery is half the cost of the boat. And I think you'll also kind of notice, I mean, I showed you the kitchen, and I'm sure I panned over some of the other woodwork, but I mean, the woodwork, I mean, it's beautiful in my opinion. Whoever owned it last, I mean, they did a great job refinishing it. I mean, it looks almost brand new. I honestly couldn't believe it when I first came in the boat. I expected it to be all worn out and dried out and nasty looking, but overall, I mean, it's in fantastic condition. Got some cleaning supplies up there. A little radio. It's actually not a VHF radio. It's actually a full HF and VHF radio. So excuse me, it's not a VHF marine radio, but it can access all the VHF channels. So I've programmed them in, but it can do a lot more than that if you have a ham radio license. Got my hat, camera bag. Some more cleaning supplies. It also came with these pillows. Pretty nice. I mean, I'm sure they weren't expensive, but overall, pretty nice interior design. I got my flashlight, first aid kit, snorkel kit. As I mentioned, I kind of grew up going to the beach, so I have that. The water is not super clear out here, but I'm sure I could still use it. I bought a lot of these like hanging things to hang stuff up. A fan up there. Little closet area. I actually have it tied open right now because there was some leaking issues before I sealed the window, so I just wanted to keep it open in case there were more. Closet works great. Opens and shuts just fine, you know, keeps locked. Previous owner left a pool noodle in there, so I still haven't done anything with it, just kind of hanging out. Got some beach towels to match the interior. These are just trash bags, little backpack. You can see this thing shuts and, you know, keeps nice and tight, which is good. Now looking over here, this is where the bathroom would be, or excuse me, the head. Sorry, I'm still learning my vocab. So you can see here, these are the water hookup and then the waste hookup. So, you know, they exist, they're there if I ever want to hook them up. Not very high to do on my priority list. I'd rather work on the electric. You can see at one point somebody refinished or resealed this the window seam. Didn't do a great job in my opinion. The factory, much better job, but it works, just not super pretty. Then looking at the main bed area, that actually goes pretty far forward. I would say about 6.5 feet to 7 feet from, you know, this panel here all the way up to the end of the point. I've slept in it quite a few nights. I sleep just fine in it as long as I have the as long as I have the AC unit going. Got a couple pillows, some sheets that I just did the laundry in. But yeah, I mean, overall it's comfortable. It could be a little bit more soft. It's a little on the hard side, but you know, it gets the job done. I realize I kind of glossed over the electrical system, so let me kind of run through that real quick as well. There's so far, I guess I found 3 electrical outlets. So there's one here, just, you know, standard 120 hookups. Another one over there, which is lacking a faceplate. And then this poor fella down here, who looks like he's definitely seen some better days. Looks a little rusted. And now I've checked all the wiring behind him, and the wiring seems to you know, be intact. As I mentioned, I still need to kind of test it all out. I need to hook up the dock power and see what happens. I'm hoping that everything works just fine. But the previous owner said there were some electrical problems, so I'm not sure. You know, we'll find out when I hook up that dock power. Then kind of going back down here to the DC panel. So the DC panel's definitely seen some better days. You know, it's down here, probably gets kicked a lot. You know, the switches seem to work, but I looked at a lot of the wiring behind it, and like some of the wires are off, some of the fuses are just like strewn about kind of back here. You can actually see some of the wires sticking out right there. I also don't know why this hole's there, to tell you the truth. But I have to buy another DC panel and then rewire all of the lights throughout the boat. So, you know, it's got your running, your cabin, bow, anchor, spreader, master. So still got to wire that up. That's high on my to-do list, since I would like you know, at some point the capabilities to sleep on it while it's anchored, and I'm definitely, you know, not comfortable sleeping on it if the lights don't work. So that's definitely high on my to-do list. I also I think I mentioned air conditioning earlier on in the video. I brought in this honestly gigantic portable AC unit that I had for my apartment that I used at one point, and it does work. I have used it on multiple nights. It's definitely oversized for the boat. However, it was, you know, essentially free since I purchased it such a long time ago. So the way I hook it up is it just has an exhaust vent here, which is where all the hot air comes out. Hooks up right here. And I actually built a little kind of custom panel. Let me grab it real quick here. Out of some of that insulation foam that you use on on a house. So I bought this at Home Depot. Drew the wood panel piece that normally kind of rests down here at the very bottom. Traced it out, you know, with Sharpie, and then, you know, cut it with a knife. Took me actually quite a while, and it fits in there almost perfectly, pretty snug. There's a little wire here to run just an extension cord through, since I wasn't, you know, as I mentioned, I wasn't sure if the AC outlet's working here. So I even cut along here a little notch, because the other piece of wood kind of rests in that notch and make sure that the water doesn't go in, it goes out. Then I also made a little cover here for the vent, so that if water does drip down, it doesn't fall into the slot here and then, you know, drip down into the AC unit. So it works pretty well. You know, it keeps it nice and cool in here at night, especially in the Georgia heat. It's August in Atlanta right now, so it's pretty hot. Right now it's probably around 90 or so, but it keeps it down to, you know, whatever I set it to. It's so overpowered, 70, 68, even if I want it to go down that far. So that works out pretty well. Got a couple of fans in here, you know, just to keep the air circulating as well. Little toolkit that I put together. Some paper towels. The Jenna was actually stored back here. Let's see if I can push the camera around. But I've taken it out to look at it. It's in that kind of teal bag. I've taken it out to look at it, but you know, as I mentioned, there's no halyard for the Genoa, so it stays back there for the time being. The boat also came with a set of 3 new West Marine life jackets, which is pretty sweet. They're pretty nice quality. I've worn one of them when I jumped in and went outside and kind of scrubbed the exterior of the boat. Well, I guess that concludes episode number 1 of Sailing Viridian. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in to watch and learn a little bit about me, my adventure here on how I actually came to be in this sailboat, as well as an actual walkthrough of the boat. Looking forward, my plan for this channel is to pretty much document my sailing experience. So some things I have planned, a couple of different upgrades, maybe some trips out on the lake, and really anything else that kind of pertains to me and the sailboat. So as I mentioned, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, definitely subscribe because I'll be releasing some videos again in the future. Thanks.